Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started in just a minute, so if everyone could get into their formation with our military and police in uniform behind, and our elected officials to the left of me, please. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Good afternoon, and welcome to the 13th Annual Sikh Remembrance Day Ceremony. We are very grateful for all our guests today joining us in person or online for this special event being live streamed all around the world through sikhmuseum.com and in partnership with Sikh Channel. We want to remind everyone today to please wear your mask at all times while you are here, and please remember that we are all gathered in a cemetery, so let's be respectful. I now call upon Buckam Singh Bola, a grade 8 student at private Buckam Singh Public School in Brampton, Ontario, to come forward for our land acknowledgement.
Hello, bonjour, and sat sri akal to everyone here today. I would like to acknowledge that we are here today in Kitchener on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples, which is on the Haldimand Treaty of 1784. I would also like to pay homage to the indigenous people who loved, cared for, and have nurtured this land for centuries, even with the destruction and genocide of their people. Nearly everyone here today has faced some type of discrimination and oppression at some point in their lives. Throughout history, oppression has been demonstrated through wars and colonization worldwide. Just like one of Canada's Sikh heroes, Private Buckam Singh. He was an individual who immigrated to Canada from India, a country full of war, and was facing colonization by the British at the time. Denied coming with his family to Canada, he was solely accepted because he would be used as a pawn to fight in the Great War, World War I. Despite all of the discrimination, hatred, and betrayal he faced by fellow Canadians, he fought with all of his will to create peace in a time of war. Private Buckam Singh is an inspiration to not only the Sikh community, but everyone who faces inequality like the indigenous people, who have forcefully sacrificed their land and their lives. We honor the brave men and women who fought in all the wars so we may enjoy peace and freedom in our country today. Thank you.
At the start of our ceremony, we recognize that the Canadian flag was at half-mast in honor of the victims and survivors of Canada's residential school system. We have raised it, then lowered it again in honor of our veterans. It is important to recognize the significance of coming together at this ceremony and this cemetery in Kitchener, Ontario, at this very site. It is the military grave of Private Buckam Singh, a World War I soldier and hero. Private Buckam Singh was one of the first Sikhs to enlist with an Ontario regiment in World War I and was wounded twice during his time on the front lines. Buckam Singh came to Canada from Mahalpur in the Hoshiarpur district of Punjab in 1907. But this special event is not just to honor him, it's to pay tribute to and thank all the veterans of conflicts and wars, past and present. This year also marks the 100-year anniversary of the adoption of the poppy as a symbol of remembrance in Canada. Veterans have given so much for our country, and our wearing of the poppy is a small way that we can give back. It's a symbol of our appreciation. Please support the poppy campaign. Collection boxes will be available, and we encourage everyone to make a generous donation to support the important work the Royal Canadian Legions do across the country for veterans and their families. We will now have the Sikh prayer of Urdas by Jatik Kaur. I ask that you please remain standing if you're able for the Urdas.
I would like to request for us all to collectively bring our focus and consciousness together as we offer Urdas, the opening prayer before the start of today's ceremony. I ask you to take a moment to be present today, in this space, on this earth, under this crisp autumn day. I ask you to gather your thoughts and collect your mindful attention for Urdas. Ek Onkar Satguru Prasad Sri Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh, Sri Bhagavati Ji Sahai. Var Sri Bhagavati Ji Ki Paat Sai Dasmi, Pratham Bhagavati Simar Gay, Guru Nanak Le Tyai, Fir Angat Korte Amardas Ramdas Se Hui Sahai, Urjin Har Gobindo, Simro Siri Har Rai, Siri Har Krishan Tyaya, Just Dittai Sab Dukh Jai, Tek Bahadur Simriya, Karnonid Avatai, Sab Thai Hui Sahai. Dasve Paatsa Siguru Gobind Singh Sahib Ji, Sab Thai Hui Sahai. Dasa pachian di jot, tan tan siguru Granth Sahib ji de paat, didar da dhyan terke, bolo ji, Vaheguru. Dear Satguruji, you are the one origin of everything, the creator, the sustainer, timeless being, abiding in all. Please bless us with your grace and mercy as we are gathered here today to pay tribute to the brave and courageous men and women who have in the past and present put their lives on the line to uphold peace, justice, and freedom for our country and abroad. In honor of Private Buckam Singh, we are here to remember the over 83,000 turban-wearing Sikh ally soldiers who were killed and the over 109,000 who were wounded in the world wars. Help us gather strength and inspiration from their valor to serve our nation with pride and dedication. Please bless us to be inclusive in remembering the sacrifices of all diverse communities who call Canada home. All Canadian war veterans, and especially the Aboriginal communities on whose land we stand. Please bless this gathering by showering your grace upon us. Bless our local communities, bless this great nation and all who call Canada home. Bless this continent and bless this earth and all of humanity. In thy grace may we resonate peace and love across this earth. We pray that we may come together as a global community to create a future where our differences can be resolved with respect, unity, and nonviolence instead of guns and wars. Let peace fill our heart, our world, and our universe. In thy name, may all of humanity abide in eternal optimism. In thy divine will, may peace and prosperity shine on all. Nanak naam chardi kala tere pane sarbata pala. Vaheguru ji ka khalsa, Vaheguru ji ki fateh. Bole Sonehal.
I want to introduce Sardar Sandeep Singh Brar, the founder and creator of the SikhMuseum.com. It was through his diligent research that the medals and gravesite of Private Buckam Singh were discovered and why we're able to come together today year after year.
Thank you, Rupinder. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. We gather today at the grave of a son of Punjab and a son of Canada to remember. If you look at the grave, on top you see a maple leaf, and at the bottom is inscription of Malpur, Punjab. He really was of two worlds, as many of us are here today. Every year on Remembrance Day, Canadians pause to think of those that have sacrificed everything for us in terms of fighting in wars and conflicts, but also in times of peace. The first Remembrance Day ceremony took place 102 years ago in Canada in 1919, a mere 2 months after the death of Buckam Singh, when King George proclaimed that this day should be used to remember the sacrifices of the war dead. We are here to honor those who fought for Canada in numerous wars. More than 2.3 million Canadians have served our country in that way, and over 118,000 gave their lives. They gave their lives and they gave up their future so that we could have a future and that we can live in peace today. Wherever the Canadians were fighting in the world wars, the Sikhs were right there fighting alongside them. Although only 9 of the thousands that tried to join in World War I, only 9 Sikhs were accepted into the Canadian military at the time. But as part of the British Indian Army, Commonwealth Army, over 65,000 Sikh soldiers fought in World War I with the Allies. And in World War II, over 300,000 Sikhs fought alongside the Allies. The war that Buckam Singh fought in was unlike any other war before it or even after it. It was by far the deadliest conflict in Canadian military history. We have never had such a large loss of life. Over 66,000 Canadian soldiers died in World War I. A letter written by a Sikh soldier of the British Indian Army in France to his home in Patiala in Punjab, dated October 18, 1915, has been translated into English by the British military officials, and it's in their military archives. And I was reading it, and I just thought it's so relevant to explaining just what kind of war they face, something that they had never seen before. And this is what he wrote. What you say in your letter about not being disloyal to the emperor and it being the religion of the Sikhs to die facing the foe, all that you say is true. But if only you yourself could be here and see for yourself. Any shriveling, sodden fellow can fire the gun and kill a score of us at our food in the kitchen. Ships sail in the skies like kites. Wherever you look, machine guns and cannon bring to shoot, and bombs fly out which kill every man they hit. The earth is mined and filled with powder. When men walk upon it, the powder is lit, and up go the men. There is no fighting face to face. Guns massacre regiments sitting 10 miles off. Put swords or pikes or staves in our hands, and the enemy over us with like arms. Then indeed we would show them how to fight face to face. But if no one faces us, what can we do? No one stands up to fight us. Everyone sits in a burrow underground. They fight in the sky, on the sea in battleships, under the earth in mines. My friend, a man who fights upon the ground can hardly escape. You tell me to fight face to the foe. Die we must, but alas, not facing the foe. Our friend, the cannons are such that they throw a shell weighing 12 mounds, which destroys the earth 500 paces around where it falls. We are in France. It is a very cold country. It is a fair country, and the people are like angels. All they lack is wings. The fighting is along a line of 300 miles. England, Turkey, Italy, Belgium, Russia, these 5 are on one side. Germany, Turkey, Austria, Hungary, Bulgaria, these 5 on the other. The battle sways evenly balanced. None can kill the other. When it ends, there will be peace. No one knows when that will be. When Buckam Singh died in 1919, he was buried here with full military honors by the Canadian military, but it would have been very painful for his family, who were halfway around the world, and they would never get a chance to come to Canada because Sikhs weren't allowed to emigrate into Canada in large numbers. And so there was no sense of closure for the family. In the same way, tens of thousands of Canadian families also face that same trauma and pain because their loved ones who died overseas were buried overseas. The number of war dead was so large that all the Commonwealth countries decided that rather than bring the dead soldiers home to their families here in Canada, that they would bury them in military graves in places such as Europe, Middle East, and Asia, the Pacific. So they're very far away from their homes and from their families. Must have been a terrible trauma for those families as well. For anyone who thinks that, remembering soldiers is really ancient history and, what relevance does it have on my life today? You couldn't be more wrong. There's a poem that I'm going to read to you by Father Dennis Edward O'Brien, and I hope it changes your perspective on that kind of attitude. He writes, "It is the soldier, not the reporter, who has given us the freedom of the press. It is the soldier, not the poet, who has given us the freedom of speech. It is the soldier, not the campus organizer, who gives us the freedom to demonstrate. It is the soldier who salutes the flag, who serves beneath the flag, and whose coffin is draped by the flag, who allows protesters to burn the flag. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
I now call upon Gurnur Kaur to present a descriptive narrative of the poem In Flanders Fields, written by Colonel Dr. John Mcrae. This will be followed by Hardit Singh reciting that famous poem.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Imagine fighting a battle in trenches far, far away from your home and seeing your close friends die in front of your eyes. What would you do? John Mcrae saw his best friend die during the Second Battle of Ypres on May 2nd, 1915, and was inspired to write an iconic poem to highlight the sacrifice of the soldiers who gave their lives so that we can live ours in peace. The poem led to the adoption of the poppy as the flower of remembrance for the British and Commonwealth war dead. John Mcrae was a poet and physician from our neighboring Guelph, Ontario. At the start of World War I, at the age of 41, he joined the Canadian Expeditionary Force. He could have been a part of the medical corps, but decided to be a frontline soldier as a gunner and medical officer. Canadian war hero Private Buckam Singh also had a special connection to this poem and Colonel Mcrae. When Buckam Singh was wounded in the Battle of St. Eloi on July 20th, 1916, he was taken to the No. 3 Canadian General Hospital at Boulogne in France. Incredibly, this hospital at the time was under the command of none other than Colonel Mcrae. In fact, the two men may have even met each other. In Flanders Field, Mcrae offers silence and understanding in simple but beautiful rhymes. The silence is contemplative, the silence of poppies among graves, the silence of loss, the silence of sacrifice. We are the dead. We did not die for nothing. We died for you. We died for your cause. Remember us, and remember that, and make sure that the fight against tyranny continues. Let's listen to his inspiring words.
In Flanders fields, the poppies grow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Mansirat Kaur will now recite the Act of Remembrance.
They shall not grow old, they shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
We will now have the last post followed by 2 minutes of silence.
Brave! Attention!
That concludes our moment of silence.
Brave! Stand at ease!
We now call upon Simmer Singh to recite the commitment to remember.
They were young as we were young. They served, giving freely of themselves. To them we pledge, amid the winds of time, to carry their torch and never forget, we will remember them.
We now begin the wreath laying portion of the ceremony, and we will begin with our elected officials, first representing the Government of Canada. So first is the Honourable Bardis Chuggar, Member of Parliament for Waterloo. She will be joined by her colleague Ruby Sahota, Member of Parliament for Brampton North. And he will be joined also by behalf of the Leader of the Official Opposition, the Honourable Tim Uppal from Edmonton Millwoods, to also lay a wreath. Next, on behalf of the Province of Ontario, the Green Party Leader of Ontario and Member of Provincial Parliament for Guelph, Mike Schreiner. On behalf of the Region of Ontario, we invite Chair Karen Redmond to lay a wreath. On behalf of the City of Kitchener, please welcome Mayor Barry Vervanovich along with his colleague, City Councillor Paul Singh. On behalf of the City of Waterloo, we call on Mayor Dave Jaworski to lay a wreath.
On behalf of the Canadian Armed Forces from 25 Toronto Field Ambulance, laying a wreath on behalf of all serving members, Major Deep Singh Bains. behalf of the Royal Canadian Legion, Fred Gies, Branch number 50 in Kitchener. Pam Berger, President, laying a wreath on behalf of veterans and the Legion's membership. Also from the Royal Canadian Legion, Waterloo Branch, number 530, Bob Berg, President, Steve Mann, Sergeant-at-Arms. Laying a wreath on behalf of Sikh veterans are Sikh veterans Lieutenant Kuldeep Singh Butcher, Warrant Officer Gurmeet Singh Soroya, Wing Commander Gurpal Singh Bala, and Wing Commander D.S. Jalwa. Laying a wreath on behalf of the uniformed police services, men and women, is Waterloo Regional Police Service Chief Barry Larkin. On behalf of Peel Regional Police, Officer Simritpal Singh. And on behalf of Toronto Police Service, Officer Inspector Andy Singh. This is Peel Regional Police, Officer Simritpal Singh. On behalf of Halton Police Services, Officer Baldeep Singh Hans. behalf of Woodstock Police Services Officer Pritpal Singh Thind. On behalf of Brampton Fire and Emergency Services, Division Chief Sardar Ravjot Singh Chatwal. On behalf of the local Sikh Sangat, the Golden Triangle Sikh Association, laying a wreath are executive members Sardar Mohan Singh Basran, Sardar Gurdeep Singh Heer, Sardar Dalbir Sidhu, Sardar Ajmer Singh Mandur, and Sardar Gurmeet Singh Saroya. Laying a wreath on behalf of Sikhs worldwide, our Ontario Sikhs and Gurdwara Council, Sardar Gobinder Singh Randhawa, Sardar Ajmer Singh Mandur, Sardar Ajit Singh Bawa, Sardar Dalip Singh Multani. Laying a wreath on behalf of Canadian citizens, Sikh Motorcycle Club of Ontario, Sardar Inderjeet Singh Jagron, accompanied by club members. Laying a wreath on behalf of Canadian youth are Private Buckam Singh Public School Principal Sylvia Zanella, accompanied by Peel District School Board Trustee Bobir Sohi, and the students from the school.
That concludes the wreath laying portion of the ceremony. Now I have two very special speakers for you. The question is, how do we ensure that the younger generation will remember our Canadian war heroes that have shaped this country? It's a good question, and to answer that, I'd like to introduce you to two students from the new private Buckam Singh Public School for their insights into this question. First, I'd like to ask grade 7 student Guneet Kaur Bangu, the artist whose artwork inspired the private Buckam Singh School logo, to come forward.
Hello everyone, my name is Guneet Bangu and I am a proud grade 7 student at Private Buckam Singh Public School in Brampton. I feel fortunate to say that my artwork was the inspiration for my school's logo. I am honored to be here and to have the opportunity to share my story. 2 years ago, when I was in grade 5, I worked on an artwork for the Sikh Heritage Month poster. I made a depiction of Private Buckam Singh on one side, with the lion next to him to show his bravery, and a maple leaf as the background to portray our country. When trying to gather ideas, I thought of the meaning of being a Sikh and the heroes of our religion. Private Buckam Singh was a great Sikh to represent because of the sacrifices he made for this country. He had the traits of being a true Sikh, including respect, honor, loyalty, bravery, selflessness, and honest service. Private Buckam Singh was one of the first Sikhs to come to Canada and one of the 9 Sikhs who fought for Canada in World War I. He respected and cared for this country with all his heart. He followed the 3 Sikh rules, known as work hard, pray to God, and lastly, share your food, as in to help others. I'm very grateful for Private Buckam Singh and his great deeds to keep us Canadians and our country safe. Even when we didn't give him the care and respect, I am proud to call myself a Sikh and learned at a school dedicated to a Sikh soldier. Private Buckam Singh is one of my greatest inspirations, and I'm thankful that I can represent my religion and show my love and gratitude to him by using my talent to honor a once forgotten Canadian hero. Thank you.
Thank you, Guneet. And now I have grade 8 student Simrit Kaur Dosanjh to speak about the relevance of the school naming to her.
Greetings, everyone. I'm very honored to be here today. I'm Simrit Kaur Dosanjh, an 8th grade student attending private Buckam Singh Public School. My peers and I are taught in a diverse and welcoming school whose doors are open to everyone regardless of their race, culture, faith, beliefs, or identity. And together, all students and teachers build a community that is respectful of diversity. For me, Private Buckam Singh is a role model for my community as he had been through many hardships, which is a testament to his strength and courage. He's one of the first Sikh soldiers in Canada, which is why as a Sikh student, along with other members of the Sikh community, we carry such pride for the recognition now bestowed upon Private Buckam Singh. He served in World War I on behalf of Canada, during a time where immigrants were discriminated against. World War I ended on November 11, 1918, which is why November 11th is dedicated as Remembrance Day. To me, Remembrance Day is a day where we honor all the men and women who have fought for our freedom. In order to show our respect and gratitude, we wear a poppy, which were the flowers that grew in the land where World War I took place. We lay wreaths, attend ceremonies, and we observe a moment of silence for 2 minutes on November 11th at 11 a.m. to remember all the individuals who have fought in wars and lost their lives so that we may enjoy freedom today. As a student who attends a school that is named after the soldier, Private Buckam Singh, it is important that we recognize and honor his legacy that will forever live on. Private Buckam Singh immigrated to the new environment of Canada at a young age, not having his family or community around him, which demonstrates his strength and courage.
by not giving up despite all the hardships he faced. Although there is not much information dated of the contributions Sikhs have played in the Canadian military service, Private Buckam Singh's story was discovered, and I am here to share it today, where we honor and show gratitude towards all soldiers who have fought for our freedom. Private Buckam Singh was born December 5th, 1893, in Mahalpur, Punjab, India, and in 1907, at the age of 14 years old, he emigrated to Canada. Private Buckam Singh was already married at the time, but due to strict immigration laws, he was unable to bring a spouse along with him. After Private Buckam Singh's arrival in Canada, he worked in mining in British Columbia before moving to Toronto, Ontario. In 1915, Private Buckam Singh enlisted in the Canadian Expeditionary Force. At the time, he was working as a farmhand in Rosebank, Ontario, when he was recruited for the active service and joined the 20th Battalion, and his last service being with the 28th Battalion. During separate battles, Private Buckam Singh was wounded twice, and it is known that he was treated by Dr. John Mcrae, who we recognize as the poem in Flanders Field. Private Buckam Singh was sent to a hospital in England and contracted an infectious disease called tuberculosis. On August 27, 1919, Private Buckam Singh passed away at the age of 25 years old to tuberculosis in a Kitchener, Ontario hospital, not being able to see his family again. He was laid to rest in Kitchener's Mount Hope Cemetery, which is where we gather today to honor one of the first Sikh soldiers in Canada, Private Buckam Singh.
And now it's time for the singing of our national anthem, and I invite Jatik Kaur, Meher Singh, Geser Singh, and I invite the other young people who spoke earlier today to join us all on stage for the singing.
Praise, praise, attention!
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Carton brasse porte il se porte la croix. Cause nostalgie it will be brilliant histoire. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Praise, stand at ease!
I'm here to offer thanks on behalf of the Sikh Remembrance Day organizing team and Sikh Museum, but I'd like to take a moment here to recognize all the uniformed veterans, all of the soldiers who have come here, all the armed forces. It's something that gives me pleasure, as it does to all the Sikhs here, to see people in uniform, but also people in turbans. There's something that happened to us in 1699 as a community of Sikhs raised by our 10 gurus from 1468 onwards to 1708. In 1699, Guru Gobind Singh Ji did a baptism of steel with the double-edged sword, and that he said, I will make sparrows into eagles. I will make sparrows fight against kites and eagles. And so there's something of heart that happened that day. There's a miracle that happened that day, that you see that miracle working in us. There's a pride in the turban, a pride in our faith, the pride in our spirituality that brings us here together. And so I want to recognize that. A young Gursikh from India met me a couple of weeks ago at the local Sikh temple, Gurdwara here, the Krishna Gurdwara, and he said to me, I would love to become a uniformed officer, whether in the police or the army. And I said, Sahib Singh, you got to come to this event. So he is here today. It is something of heart. We can't explain that. Why is it that Sikhs have asked for their right to follow their faith and wear their turbans, keep their articles of faith? So I appreciate what we have provided over the past many decades in Canada for Sikhs to be included in the Canadian Armed Forces and the police services. And we need to continue that work. All of us have to continue that work so we may become an inclusive community that includes various groups and recognizes the diverse contributions, but also appreciates and values these contributions that we make as communities. It makes us stronger as a community, as a globe, when every other country recognizes the barriers that we have created and removes those barriers and continues to grow their diverse communities and make them inclusive. So I thank you all for this part. It gives me goosebumps every year. I've said this, and it's the 13th year, I believe. I still feel goosebumps in seeing all of you here. It makes me very proud as a son of an Indian Army officer to come back each year and see Canadian Sikh soldiers here, Canadian Armed Forces, and to see Canadian Sikhs included in our police services. So I thank everyone here for coming together today and celebrating this milestone that we have in recognizing our contributions in the community. So on behalf of our Sikh Remembrance Day organizing team and the Sikh Museum, I'd like to thank all of our veterans. I'd like to thank the Royal Canadian Legions, all our MPs from Ottawa, all our MPPs from Queen's Park, Mayor Branovich, Mayor Jaworski, the Canadian Forces personnel, the police services from Toronto, Halton, Woodstock, and Peel, Chief Larkin and members of the Waterloo Region Police Service, members of the Sikh communities and various Sikh organizations and associations who've, including our motorcycle club people who I see have, ridden their bikes here in this cold weather. As a motorcycle rider myself, I know that it takes a lot to bear the weather, and even though it's a wonderful day today. So I appreciate everyone's presence here. I'd like to say a warm thank you to our friends from the Peel region and Waterloo Region District School Board and our students who've led various parts of the ceremony today. And thank you so much for making this such an inspiring ceremony and standing united as Canadians. I'd like to thank our friends from various media outlets who have come here and made this event that's possible, especially to Jaspal Singh from Sikh Vibes for the live broadcast that so many of you from around the globe could be part of this. And so I thank all the media outlets for the work they've done to make this event grow worldwide today. And the recording of the ceremony will be posted on sikhmuseum.com over the next few days, so look for that, and please share that with others who may have missed this live ceremony today. We encourage everyone to remember our veterans on Remembrance Day services to be held across our communities on Thursday, November 11th. Please take an opportunity to thank our local veterans and current serving military men and women. Please, after the ceremony, please, this is an educational opportunity for us to interact with each other and support each other at this time. We all take inspiration from this event. It is a unique event in Canada and probably across the world to have a gravesite of a Sikh soldier where we can gather. So at last, I'd like to request everyone as we head home, let's reflect knowing that we have honored some incredible Canadian contributions to protect our freedoms and values. As we head home, we'd like to also remember the work that has to be done ahead to make our communities more inclusive. This concludes the official ceremony, and it marks a year after the coronavirus time struck us. Last year, a few of us gathered here on November 11th. We couldn't have an official ceremony, but we are back again on track. So if you could mark your calendars for next year, the event will happen on the Sunday before November 11th. We will now have group photos after the ceremony, and it will be taken by each group. We will request people of the Canadian Forces to start first, and Gurpreet Singh will probably lead some of the organization of that. I appreciate all of your time. Let's bring our thoughts together and reflect on what we have achieved in this time. Thank you so much. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.